I don't want to make it all about data, but I've never ever met anybody that regretted tracking the data once they did it, right? And or getting some metrics, because it doesn't lie. You're right. The numbers won't lie. They also might need to be further examined. Like, I'm not making these gains in this particular area, but I have this data to look at, and I go, well, actually I am. Yeah. It's just not what I thought in my head, which is a big problem with a lot of programs. Is you buy a program and you think you should be getting a result, and that's just built up in your head. Like, I should have this result X, whatever it happens to be, but you didn't actually do the things to actually get that result. And or you're not aware of the things that are happening behind that or underneath that are going to contribute to that result over time. And to your point, that's the thing with, again, this it's kind of a buzzword right now in this concurrent training. You hear people talking using the term hybrid athletes, right? Where they're kind of trying to do everything. I'm okay with that term. Excuse me, because I think people can relate to it. Like, they understand, I don't just get big, I can actually run, and I can actually be I can express the strength and the muscle that I have in some form or fashion. If you want to call it that, that's fine. This isn't a hybrid athlete program. Again, I don't know what that is, but if you can relate to it this way, that's pretty much the definition of the concurrent training. Is that we're constantly working all these things. And yes, there will be more of a focus during certain blocks and periods. We come out of the gate with this just at the beginning, where I think most people want to be or have probably spent quite a bit of time and can easily ease into this program. That is a thing about doing like a program for the masses. Like, hey, how do we get people on board and get them doing this and feeling comfortable with it, and it's not completely foreign to them? So the first block of this the first couple blocks are going to be mainly a strength and hypertrophy focus. Yeah. So you're going to be seeing and visiting exercises that you're probably very familiar with, equipment that you're familiar with, but there are some things in there that may be a little bit different for you. Probably going to be a little bit more unilateral work after a while. Maybe you're not doing a lot of that. Again, where are we putting in the power pieces? Not a ton of power focus in this first block, right? There is some. We're going to establish some things. First, movement, right? A good foundation of movement, right? A good foundation of strength, right? We're going to put on a little bit of muscle, and then we'll move into some power movements. And all the while, yes, we're doing a little bit of capacity. Going back to the capacity piece, it's a piece that I think is the most misunderstood and misapplied part of any of these programs.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, I think with capacity, I think so many people just think of, if I do this thing that feels like cardio and I'm tired, then I'm doing my capacity work. I'm going to go on the stair stepper for 30 minutes after my workout. Where we've done whole episodes on the different types of capacity training or conditioning work or cardio. There is some nuance between those things, but I think a lot of people just think, and we actually, you just did a workshop here about conditioning, and I think a lot of people were kind of getting some lessons learned of what does it actually mean to train in different heart rate zones? What does it mean? How long should you do that? I think even with this program, like, if you're going to have your high strength day, maybe that's not on the exact day that you're doing your high output zone 5 conditioning day. And how do you balance those things too? And I think learning to, one, either based off RPE or metrics based on outputs, or really, really valuable is learning how to track these things based on your heart rate. You even just did kind of, I think, a free guide that you just released as well, that goes into like how to test these things and how to break down different heart rate zones and how do you apply that to your training. So that's something that just being tired and breathing hard does not mean you're improving your capacity, especially at specific intervals or specific zones that have different benefits. There are different benefits to doing zone 2 or zone 3 or zone 4. And how do you implement those rest times, and the work to rest ratios are really, really important. And what outputs are you actually reaching is really, really important.
So on top of that, one of our previous podcasts, we talk about junk volume. That could be applied to capacity as well.
Yeah. Perfect example of junk volume. Yeah. I'm just going to run more. That's the
you nailed it. I think it's like, how hard can I work for a period of time, right? Yeah. We're talking about power, right? And we're talking about capacity when we're talking about that. Obviously, you have to have a foundation of strength, but organizing that seems to be where the miss is, right? And it generally turns into like a medley of exercises, and it's usually on the clock. And really, there's no other metric being measured, or let's just see, being monitored otherwise. So monitored also mean once you're monitoring it, then you know when to throttle up or throttle back. It's also, with monitoring it, you can have some metrics. And with those metrics, you can know when to throttle up or throttle back. And oftentimes for a lot of the folks I talk to, it's about knowing when to throttle back. Yeah. So there's a recovery component that's been built into this, right? I think that's a really important aspect for people that are trying to do all of the things. So there's not this interference across the variables. And so that I'm getting the things out of the different focuses that I'll be having both in my workouts and in my blocks. So over the session itself, the weeks, right? The months as this stuff starts to accumulate, that I'm managing it appropriately so that I'm getting all the benefits of the different application of capacity training. This is what I see. It's either like I'm really into my heart rate monitor and that's all I do, and I'm constantly doing that. And it often is coupled with, something like cycling, they're out on their mountain bike or whatever else. Or they're on the Concept 2 bike or whatever, and that's good. But what are we actually? It turns into a beatdown session. Mm-hmm. It turns into a beatdown session, and if the watch doesn't hit the certain rings or it doesn't hit the high points, it doesn't get into the orange or the red. I didn't work out hard enough today. That's a trap. The other way is like I don't monitor any of that stuff at all. I just have this medley of things, and this could be like you go into the world of CrossFit, and I think people that have spent time in there understand what that feels like. Hey, we are doing this EMOM, right? And that ends up being like oftentimes with EMOMs, you see it including skills work, right? With certain exercises.
Snatches.
You're snatching for time, for a period of time. And like in the sport of CrossFit, that makes a lot of sense. But in the game of life, especially as people are getting on and trying to balance all these things, it may not make as much sense anymore, specifically if you're not going to be competing in something like the CrossFit Games or High Rocks or whatever it is that they're doing, right? So if that's what you're doing, then you should be on a CrossFit specific or High Rocks specific program. That's not what this is. This is like, look, man, I need a good level and want a good level of strength because I understand the benefits there. I want a decent level of power, right, for the things that I do outside of the gym, right? And I understand where it shows up for me, again, on the mats, on my bike, on the range, whatever it happens to be. And the capacity piece supports all of that, right? And they play off one another.